If you don't succeed, try again. And literally, that's the only answer you have if you're Mike Elko and Texas A&M following a less than stellar opener against Notre Dame. But the good news is you have time to tune things up, work out the kinks before the start of conference play and your first major road test to the Swamp by taking on McNeese. Does Texas A&M look better on offense? And what are we going to find out more about this defense heading into the last tune-up before conference play begins? What's going on, SEC Unfiltered? He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything you need to know, coming to you live from Kyle Field on Saturday. But make sure you hit the subscribe button down below because this is your new home for all things SEC. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, really everywhere you got social media. We're there at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave on Twitter at Knock10 Sports. Go yell at me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to keep up with the number one source for all things SEC, make sure you visit secunfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the promo code SECU at prizepicks.com and sign up and get $50 instantly when you lay down your first $5+ lineup. You want to make some bets, you want to win some cash, you want to go ahead and play a game that isn't just about the betting lines. You actually get to look deep into matchups. Go ahead and use Prize Picks, promo code SECU. First $50 on us. Dave, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about McNeese Cowboys. Listen, they're 1-1. They got a win last week over Southern. Clifton McDowell, Camden's six killer. One of them is going to be playing the quarterback in this matchup. We know that they have some mobility on the ground, especially when it comes to the QB position, which could be beneficial depending on what happens with the Florida situation next week. But this is all about Texas A&M. This is all about setting a standard and getting back to the basics after what we saw. There was a lot to take away in this game. You and I talked about this on the postgame show. As much as we want to go and blame the offensive inconsistencies, there still is a lot to like about the direction that this defense is going in. You have to like that the offensive line looked a little bit more consistent, holding blocks for Weigman and opening up running lanes, something that was a missing element the last few years down in Texas A&M. And the talent's there. The talent is absolutely there, and we know that this is going to be a game where as long as you're not completely unraveling going into the fourth quarter, you're not only going to win, you're going to feel pretty confident going into your next matchup in the Swamp. But let's just be real. This is a get-right game for Mike Elko to set a new standard in College Station. You had the 48 hours to go ahead and just mope, be upset, understand that a loss is a loss, but your season's not over, and one game does not define your entire era of 2024.
No, I agree. It's a get-right game. Couldn't come at a better time. I mean, McNeese State won one game, I think, when I was looking them up last year. They're 1-1 this year. It's all about A&M, like you said. It's getting back right this week before a big one for both Florida and Texas A&M in the Swamp next week. I mean, both teams need it for different reasons, but one's in a deeper part of their tenure. Elko, obviously Billy Napier needs it more, but Elko needs it too if he wants to have a successful first-year campaign in College Station. But I would say somewhere along the line, Colin Klein and Connor Weigman, there has to be some kind of compromise, not between both. Obviously, it's Colin Klein's decision, Mike Elko's decision, but compromise within maybe Colin Klein's system to play within Connor Weigman's strengths. I mean, traditionally, he's a running quarterback. Traditionally, he's had Skylar Thompson at Kansas State. He's had Will Howard at Kansas State. Guys he likes to run between the tackles. I don't really think Connor Weigman's comfortable in this system as we stand right now on September 3rd, 2024. That could change. But even Connor Weigman said he was throwing off his back foot. He was just moving his landmarks, just could never get comfortable. His feet were all over the place. You could see it when you back watch the game. When you watched it live, I think we talked about it post-game. That's what I really want to see. And it seems like Mark Naboo, the center, is going to be out for the season now. So now it's my guy I'm going to have a big eye on here too. We're adding another center in this who played a little bit against Texas A&M, but it's Utah transfer. We've talked about him before, but forgive me for the pronunciation. Kalanuyu Fayu, the transfer from Utah.
Go ahead and blame Maggie fans. You go after Dave for that one.
Yeah, go after me for that one. But no, I mean, he looked honestly better a little bit than Mark Naboo did in the first half. So, I mean, I think that can be fine, but just really got what kind of identity do we want to be? I left that game on Saturday, Cole. Really, I'm with you. I don't think everything's wrong. I think A&M's all right. They'll be fine. I think because the defense is going to carry. It's going to travel every game. It's going to give them an opportunity. And I think some of the things on offense can be fixed if we're willing to compromise and play within some strengths of the personnel. I want to see it starting on Saturday. There shouldn't be any struggle against McNeese State, guys. I don't like to put a point total on it, but just in layman's terms, they should be scoring 50 plus on this McNeese State Cowboy defense, guys. Come on, we got the rust needs to come off, and then I think it's a big season tone setter next week. It's going to really be a true tell of A&M, their 24 season under Mike Elko in his first season. I mean, so you got to set the tone this week, get right, work on yourself, kind of use it as a bye week. No offense to McNeese State, but it is what it is. We got to figure ourselves out, and we're lucky we get a game like this to figure it out after week 1, and we still have 11 games in front of us.
Let me just say what has been on my mind for the last 72 hours since we did the live stream, since I've gone back and I've watched the film. It's the reality of the situation. Notre Dame is very well potentially a top 10 team in college football. They have an elite secondary. The fact that you weren't able to create separation, that's partially due to the fact that it's a lot of young receivers, a lot of transfers, a lot of new names joining the mix, and a lot of guys who aren't used to the system. But it's also a combination to say, we're not going to see many secondaries that are as great as this. Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison and the linebacker play, you're not going to find many back sevens that have that much talent. It is one of the best in college football. So for you, if you want any type of, I would guess, say serendipity of the offense, know that that is going to be the standard of what you will see in a college football playoff. But right now, you're not thinking of the college football playoff. You're thinking of getting back, setting the right mindset, putting your body in the right situation to go into conference play and be able to show why everything that was talked about this offseason in such a positive direction, you can still achieve that. You can still achieve being one of the teams that people don't want to play on Saturdays because of that physical bite, because of that torrentious force, because of the stability of what you have on the offensive line and the defensive line. That is what your MO is. So take that with a grain of salt. But let's go back to the main point. It's Connor Weigman. And for me, when you look at Connor Weigman in this game, it's about understanding this is the style of offense that we're going to run. What works and what doesn't. And honestly, that's also big on Colin Klein, where he's had several months to work out with exactly what type of quarterback he knows that he has at his disposal for QB1. And again, we've heard Mike Elko talk about this in the offseason. We heard him talk about it in spring ball. Connor is the starting quarterback until he's not. And so this is a game where you really want to be able to know that there is a great identity. There is a certain plan. There is a certain type of personnel package that will work for your guy because we know what punchline culture is. We know that people right now are absolutely dogging on number 15, who still was a 5-star talent, still was one of the best quarterbacks in the state of Texas when he was coming out of Bridgeland High School, and still showed you the potential at times last year before we got injured that this is somebody that can work. So it's one of those moments where what works and what doesn't, let's finalize this before halftime. That way, when we go into the third quarter, what we can do is we can have you play 1 or 2 drives like we saw with Jackson Dart, like we see at time, like we saw with Nico Iamaleava, like we saw with Jalen Milroe. Let's do that. That way we can get our backups in, see what they offer, because just in case of anything, we have to know that we are still, like All-State, in good hands.
No, I'm with you. You got to work out some kinks. You got to get some of the backups in to start building that competitive depth as you roll into league play. No, I mean, you hit on most of it, Cole. I mean, I don't have to go back into it. Again, I think it's just a week of A&M. Need to treat it like a bye week. We need to figure ourselves out here, especially offensively. Defensively, dude, I think you were fine. I mean, I do think I was a little surprised Notre Dame started leaning on you in the fourth quarter, but I think for the most part, everything's fine. I think Notre Dame's offensive line's a little better than we expected.
They are. Let's just go ahead and cut to the chase. The way that they have recruited the last few years is something that I think is going to be a standard underneath Marcus Freeman. And now with Mike Denbrock there, it's going to be, I think, a major asset to the Irish, especially they know how to build offensive linemen, and they always have. Like Notre Dame has been one of those programs known for offensive line play.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, they lost Alt this past year, Alt and Fisher this past year. But no, I mean, yeah, A&M's defense going to be fine. It's the least of my concerns. Again, Mike Elko doesn't field bad defenses. Like, they're never going to be bad. So this season's going to come down to their offense. How does that develop? Like you say, can they create an identity within these next this week and next week. After that game ended on Saturday, they had about 2 weeks to, hey, we got to figure out some kind of offensive identity. I mean, they have to. I mean, you bring that into a game, I mean, you could go into Arlington and lose this year. I mean, if Arkansas gets their stuff right. I mean, it's not I mean, defensively, Arkansas is going to – that early in the year, the depth's still going to be there for them to compete. Get them in November, maybe a little different. But, yeah, A&M's got to – it'll be interesting. You got to figure it out. They got 2 weeks to figure it out before they go to the Swamp. Florida's going to probably be improved to figure out where they need to figure themselves out. So this week's all about just getting right. And unfortunately for McNeese State, they're going to be the experimental guinea pig on all this.
Let's talk about the offense real fast, especially when it comes to what does work for a Colin Klein system. Number one, the running backs. You saw a glimpse of that. You saw a little bit of Le'Veon Moss. You saw a little bit of E.J. Smith. You saw a lot of Amari Daniels being able to be that third down type of guy. Yeah. I think Moss right now is taking over as that lead back. But the other thing that's really important, and you know this because we've studied the film, Colin Klein's offenses love to utilize the tight ends. They absolutely love to target across the middle of the field to their big body receivers. It's why the guy from Kansas State, Ben Sinnott, is currently a third-round pick that's now in the NFL. So for me, what I'm looking for in this game is how consistent can you see Trey Watson, see Merlin, see Donovan Green, if he can come back in and play fully healthy. How can we get these three to be?
They almost, you remember, Cole, you go watch the K-State, they're almost hybrid H-backs.
And they kind of have to be, too. That's the other thing that's really important.
Yeah, they got to be able to block at the point of attack as well, too. And that may be something A&M doesn't have. That's what I'm saying. The personnel fit with this will be really interesting down the line here.
But I think that the main point is, for me, we don't know what we're going to see at wide receiver. This is one of those games where you're going to get better separation. You just simply are because of the talent level.
Yeah.
And that's not an insult toward McNeese at all. It's more so a compliment to what A&M was able to bring.
It is what it is. It's the space.
And also they have young players that you want to kind of see maybe separate themselves. You got an Ernest Campbell. You got an Isaiah Williams. You got a Terry Busey. What can they provide alongside a Moose Muhammad? What can they provide alongside a Noah Thomas? What can they provide alongside a Ja'Day Walker, a Cyrus Allen? But for me, I want to see those tight ends be utilized because what it feels like more so than not, and what it does feel like is going to be beneficial for not just Weigman, but also for Klein's offense to work the way he wants, is to see those guys actually step up. The Watsons, the Merlins, the Donovan Greens. Maybe it's somebody that we haven't even mentioned just yet, but I want to see that tight end play be really on point because it does feel like when you look at that Florida game as well, there were some inconsistencies right past that 12-yard marker. If you can attack the middle of the field like that, the way that you see, the way Miami did, you might actually end up having a better chance than we're probably projecting right now.
Yeah, no, there's 2 weeks to empty it out. You're right. 100%. You're right. I think that center spot and the tight ends are going to have to be able to change some ways too. And obviously, you're right. We won't know this week about the receivers 100%. You're better. There's more athleticism. And the gap now between the SEC level like this and FCS is only bigger now. So, I mean, it is what it is. But no, I mean, we got 2 weeks. We'll see a little sample of it. It's all going to come down to the A&M fans are going to see it in 3 weeks. Or sorry, 2 weeks and get in the swamp.
Dave, the beauty that you and I do when we work together is we pick one player that we're watching. Let's be real. We're not going to be caring that much, I think, about this starters on defense like a Nick Scorton, like a Shamar Stewart. We saw enough of them against a top 10 team to know that they're good. But is there somebody that you're just wanting to see maybe take that next step forward on either side of the football?
Let's go offensively. You're right. It's tough to go receivers because, again, we talked about that athletic mismatch A&M has. I think it's going to go back again. I think it's going to be the guy I mentioned early. I think the guy's going to take over full time at the center spot. I think he's going to have a big key initially in this. I think you had I'm not stealing yours here, but I think you just mentioned a good position too. One of those tight ends would be phenomenal because you're right. They're key factors, key pawns in that Colin Klein system. But I'm going to go with my guy. Sorry, people. Utah transfer, Colleen O'New, Fayu. So, like Cole said, y'all come at me, A&M fans, for the mispronunciation. If you did, I actually thought that was decent, honestly. I'm sure I missed a vowel or something there somewhere, but I thought it was pretty good. But again, he played a little bit on Saturday. I thought he honestly looked kind of the best out of them all. I mean, TJ Shanahan got in there for a fourth down snap. Barton Naboo went out with an injury. He's out for the year. So it's Fayu's spot, hopefully for the rest of the year. Thought he looked the best, like I said, but let's see it translate. Again, new center, new quarterback. This would be the game to work it out. Let's see what it looks like. I'm sure it'll look fine, but let's see. We don't have any like pre-snap or procedural stuff that can get you beat, undisciplined stuff that a quarterback and center needs to have that relationship the way, hey, everybody's on the same page. We're all communicating. This is a game where even if you commit those, it's not going to haunt you. But the next week in the swamp, when you're trying to get your first SEC win, yeah, that could be the difference between a win and a loss.
Before you go and pig roast Dave, before you put him on the bonfire, just remember, Aggie Nation, this was a guy that did work for you. He worked at your school, and more importantly, he has some stories to where he definitely
send him an Aggie ring, man.
He has some stories that definitely agree with what you have been preaching for years. For me, this is a very simple one. There is a 5-star cornerback that we saw a few highlight plays with. I think that you're going to need to see him step up by the time that it gets to Mississippi State, by the time it gets to LSU, by the time it gets to potentially, when it gets to Texas, when it gets to Auburn, they have those talents. And again, for me, this is a get-right game. I did not think Des Riggs played extremely well when he was out there. I thought he had some highs, he had some lows. I think the talent is through the roof on this kid. I mean, when you're getting recruited by Nick Saban and he's saying that you have a shot to be special and be one of the best that walks through this building, you know that he is not sugarcoating it. He truly does believe that with the right coaching and with the right teachings, you can get there. They have the right teachings in Texas A&M. They have the right guy that can get the best version of defensive play in Mike Elko. This is a game where we need to see him take that next step forward, because if you may call on him a lot, especially when we don't know what's going on with the nickel position right now, especially if you got to move Tyreek Chappelle inside more, this is where Des Riggs is going to, I think, have a much more substantial role. So let's see what he does now, separating himself after a game where he was truly tested against receivers that I think by the season's end, Bo Collins, Shaden Greenhouse, we're going to be talking about them in a much more prominent light. And it was just a really rocky performance first day underneath Mike Denbrock, but he was able to have some good moments. Let's see what he does against another team. There is no spread on this game. 11:15 kick at Kyle Field. So really early, 11:45, my apologies, kick. No spread. That
people College Station. Get in and out.
That kind of tells you exactly what to think about this game. Dave, we're not going to have to go into too much detail, but what do you want to see in, let's just call a spade, a win for A&M?
Let's just be confident in our offense, guys. They're not going to go empty the playbook either just because they know they got a big one the next week. Let's just no pre-snap penalties. Let's look like we're getting some push. Let's look like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing at this level. I trust the defense. Again, I think this final score is going to be, it's a name your score game, but I think it's going to go something like 54-3. Maybe. I don't even know if McNeese will score. I think A&M, it depends if A&M wants them to score or not, really.
To me, I think that A&M doesn't let them score personally. Yeah. I still think that with a Mike Elko defense, you're not going to play that many teams that are as physical and look that way like Notre Dame. And when you do, they're probably playing for more than just a spot with a 9-win season. They're probably playing for Atlanta. They're playing for a college football playoff berth. They're right there alongside you. So I don't think they allow them to score, even with the second team. But I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. I have learned in the past not to put the wagon before the horse when it comes to Texas A&M. And after the performance that we saw, I have made it clear. I can't continue to say what the potential is of Connor Weigman. I have to see it. I have to see him show that growth. I have to see that maturation. I have to see that consistency on third down. I have to see where errant passes that look a little bit short-sighted end up connecting. And he will in this game, and it shouldn't be something that we take away, but it does show that I need to let it actually mellow. I have to let it kind of saturate. I have to let it really, really soak up what I'm watching on the field. I'll go 41-0. I think that they're not going to be as polished on that opening drive. I think they'll find their way into the end zone very quickly in the second, third, fourth drive, but I think it will take a little bit longer than what we expect. That's just my personal belief. Hopefully I'm wrong. Again, A&M, I have picked you this year. I'm doing a yearly segment on SEC Unfiltered.
Oh, is that a call? Is that a cause for concern if that happens?
Prove me wrong. It might be. But honestly, here's the thing. I think by the fourth quarter, we are seeing Jalen Henderson. We are seeing Marcel Reed potentially play. Let's see what they look like. And let's see if they don't have to go to them and say the second or third quarter. Because if you have to go to them in the second or third quarter, that's where we have the cause a little bit for concern.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Let us know in the comment section down below. What do you think the final score is, Texas A&M fans? Let us know. Do you think that Connor Weigman is still the long-term answer? Do you believe that you'll see enough in this game to feel confident going into the swamp next week against a very sluggish and probably also hibernating Gators roster. Like, review, subscribe. Make sure that you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports. If you want to scream and yell at me for my bad takes on Twitter, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to keep up with the #1 source for all things SEC, make sure that you visit SECUnfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson, Aggie Nation. Yig 'em!